3:47 a.m., my phone pinged with a prearranged warning. The dreaded alert had arrived. My spouse, Bridget, was active on Instagram, publishing stories while lying beside me pretending to be asleep. I maintained my breathing, keeping my gaze on her face partially concealed by the faint light emanating from her phone screen in the dark. Her fingers danced swiftly across the keyboard, typing captions, applying filters, and uploading content. After 30 seconds, she'd checked the reactions. The smile that graced her features under the blue glow was one I hadn't witnessed aimed at me in 8 months, the trigger for the alert being a mirror selfie she had taken in our bathroom several hours prior. Her makeup was flawless, she wore the dress I'd praised at dinner, and her hair was styled. The caption read, "Single energy sparkles nail." She wore her wedding ring on her hand, folded over. I remained still, chose not to challenge her. Over the past month, my marriage crumbled before my eyes via social media posts I was not intended to view. Instead, I captured this moment mentally. My wife feigned sleep beside me in our bed, crafting an online image of solitude. This detail would prove significant later on. Everything seemed to matter in the present, pointing towards consequences in the future. The secret Instagram account I'd created to monitor her activities displayed 3 weeks of her soft launching a single life. Fitness selfies accompanied by new beginnings captions, coffee shop check-ins during hours she claimed were meetings, pictures subtly concealing her rings with captions about putting myself first, and never felt more liberated. Her comments sections buzzed with supportive messages from friends who seemed to know something I did not. Perhaps they too were misled as I had been, but I was no longer in the dark. Tonight, or rather this morning, marks the final post Bridget will make from our bed, feigning my role as a sleeping spouse. The essence of betrayal lies in its visibility. Once recognized, it cannot be unseen. Upon acknowledgement, one stops reacting and starts strategizing. 6 weeks ago, I was still the blissfully ignorant husband who trusted Bridget's words about needing time to find herself. We had been married for 9 years without children, a fact she always emphasized, and I respected her decision. My profession was in commercial real estate development, while hers was managing a marketing firm she had established herself. Our life was comfortable, residing in a neighborhood with decent amenities. Our financial well-being was secured through a post-nuptial agreement we signed 3 years ago upon Bridget's inheritance from her grandmother, which provided clear boundaries. I considered it a smart and mature decision, typical of couples who communicated effectively. However, I had been proven quite ignorant on several accounts. Inquiry commenced from a solitary remark on one of her uploads. Her companion Alexis stated, "At last, so pleased for you picking yourself." A photo of Bridget at a wine bar posted on a Thursday night suggested she'd told me she was working overtime on a client presentation. As I scrolled through Alexis's recent comments on Bridget's posts, they recounted a narrative. "You deserve this liberation. Fresh start vibes. He never valued you in the first place." The latter was 2 weeks old under a sunset photo captioned, "Lone sunsets have a distinct flavor." I remained seated in my car outside my workplace for 40 minutes that day, engrossed in every post, every remark, every like, constructing a timeline, comprehending that my spouse had been publicly portraying the culmination of our marriage to an audience of acquaintances and spectators, while I came home each night to someone who still greeted me with a kiss and inquired about my day. The mental conflict was incapacitating initially. This wasn't feasible. There had to be another explanation. Perhaps she was finding ways to deal with an alleged midlife crisis, or maybe I was misinterpreting her social media actions. Nevertheless, I'm not naive and I didn't remain inactive. I contacted my attorney Gregory the same day. We had collaborated on property contracts for years, and he is known for his discretion, efficiency, and having handled his own divorce 5 years prior with strategic finesse. Upon showing him the posts, he commented, "She's publicly portraying singlehood while legally married to you. The question is why? Is she constructing a story, exploring options, or actually engaged with someone else? I don't have all the answers yet. Then we will find out. Thus, quietly gather evidence without altering my behavior, so as to understand the situation before taking action. If she has a plan in motion, we need to be aware of it before she sets it into action." This discussion took place 4 weeks ago. After that point, I assumed the role of an attentive spouse, simultaneously conducting a clandestine probe into our relationship. I enlisted the services of a private investigator named Carol, recommended by Gregory, a retired detective with expertise in marital cases. I established surreptitious social media profiles to track Bridget's public activities. I began meticulously documenting our financial transactions, her schedule, Her professed whereabouts contrasted with her actual locations, and discovered discrepancies that rendered her seemingly trivial posts suspect. Carol's surveillance findings revealed Bridget's frequent meetings with a man named Todd Vance. These encounters included coffee dates, lunches, and twice when they departed together in his vehicle for a downtown apartment complex, staying indoors for approximately 2 to 3 hours each time. Carol identified Todd as the proprietor of a rival marketing firm. Bridget had occasionally mentioned him in conversation as a networking connection. Carol's surveillance images revealed unprofessional body language. He was seen holding hands in parking lots, with his arm around her waist as they entered his building. A particularly incriminating photo from 2 weeks back showed them kissing in his car outside a restaurant, her wedding ring evident on the hand touching his face. I scrutinized this image for some time, not due to hurt feelings, but rather to comprehend the intricacies of her deceit. She wore the same dress when she returned home that night and kissed me, used the same mouth, slept beside me in our bed. However, the financial records offered a different narrative that clashed with their affair. 3 months ago, I found out about Bridget's secret business account through our joint credit monitoring service. She had been transferring funds from our shared account, which we both contributed equally to for common expenses, into another account. Initially, the amounts were small, $500 or $1,000 at a time. Later, the transfers grew larger. In just 1 month, she shifted around $17,000. When I had inquired about our joint account balance casually 2 weeks prior, she blamed escalating grocery costs and client entertainment expenses she claimed to have incurred. She mentioned inflation as a factor. Costs were increasing everywhere, she said. The explanation was given with sincere eye contact and an empathetic smile. However, through legal procedures, Gregory managed to acquire our financial records for divorce preparation. The records showed a careful plan. Bridget wasn't merely having an affair. She was strategically rearranging her assets. Aside from the $17,000 in unauthorized transactions, she's shifting deposits from her business account, altering her retirement account beneficiary to her sister, and modifying our joint credit cards to exclude me while including Todd Vance, all actions Gregory mentioned during our meeting 3 days ago as part of an exit strategy. Her social media presence is contributing to this scheme, painting a picture of a woman escaping a suffocating marriage. The practical aspect involves safeguarding and relocating assets before the divorce filing, indicating her intent to divorce me. She aims to portray herself as a brave woman finding the courage to leave, while positioning herself as the sympathetic party in the public eye. Her social media posts are subtly sowing this narrative among our circle of friends. When she files for divorce, everyone will likely be predisposed to believe her account of events, given this prepared narrative. Regarding the postnup, we have distinct asset segregation. The postnuptial agreement safeguards assets obtained prior to marriage and via inheritance. However, these transactions involve funds shared within the marriage. If she has transferred sufficient funds before filing, she may claim it was for valid business expenses or household needs that you have declined to cover. This could devolve into a he said she said scenario unless there is clear evidence of intent. What if I initiate the process first? Gregory offered a smile, but it wasn't a friendly one. Then we establish the narrative and freeze the accounts before she can transfer any more funds. However, you must be completely sure about this decision. Once initiated, there will be no turning back. I had been certain for 3 weeks. Tonight's Instagram post was just confirmation. At 3:15 a.m., Bridget finally put her phone aside and moved away from me, settling into sleep. Real sleep this time. I waited 30 minutes to make sure, then left the bed and went to my home office. I had duplicates of everything on hand. Carol's monitoring records with timestamps and photos, bank documents revealing unauthorized transactions, screenshots of every social media post, credit card bills showing expenses at eateries and hotels on days Bridget told me she was working late or meeting clients. Phone records obtained via our family plan, indicating numerous calls and messages to Todd Vance's number. However, I had something that Bridget didn't know, something crucial compared to all the evidence of infidelity. 4 months ago, before any of this began, Bridget asked me to co-sign a business loan for her company in the amount of $150,000 to fund an expansion. New office space, additional staff, advanced equipment were mentioned in the business plan, which appeared sound. We had discussed business projections at this very desk, her enthusiasm genuine, her aspirations clear. I invested in her endeavor not just because I believed in her, but also as her spouse and partner, the loan contracts explicitly stating shared responsibility for repayment. In case of her company's bankruptcy, creditors could seize both our assets. It was a risk I took, relying on her business acumen. She had grown the firm from scratch, demonstrating her competence. However, it now appeared she was surreptitiously transferring funds and planning to divorce me, making the loan a far more menacing liability. Gregory clarified the legal consequences bluntly. If she files for divorce followed by bankruptcy or intentional default of that loan, I would still be responsible for the entire debt. She could potentially deplete her business assets, file for bankruptcy, and leave me with a significant six-figure debt. There's uncertainty about her intentions, but the sequence of events is questionable. 3 months ago, she secured a loan with your endorsement. Now she's transferring funds and preparing to file. Can we impede this? We can make it financially burdensome for her to proceed, but immediate and precise action is required from you. I've been preparing for the right move over the past week. At 6:30 in the morning, I gently roused Bridget. She stirred, still unaware she had been awake for 3 hours discussing her solo life online. "Good morning," I said. "I've made coffee we should discuss before work." She sat up, instantly cautious. "Discuss what?" I replied. "About us, about where we stand." "I believe it's time for honesty," she responded. I observed her face as it cycled through various emotions. Concern, calculation, a decision forming behind her eyes regarding the nature of our conversation. "Okay," she said cautiously. "Let me get dressed. Take your time." She did so. 25 minutes spent in the bathroom, she exited dressed casually yet with a full makeup, hair well groomed, a protective layer for whatever dialogue she anticipated. In the kitchen, she found me with 2 coffee cups on the counter. "So," she started, grabbing her cup, "what's this about? I know you're not content." I spoke straightforwardly. "I am unhappy," without making an accusation yet. She slightly loosened up. This was familiar ground. "I've been attempting to sort things out. It's not about you, it's about me needing to. Find yourself, I understand, you've hinted at it before and I've given it thought. What you need, what's fair, what seems reasonable for both of us." "What are you implying?" "I am suggesting we might require some defined space, contemplate a trial separation, offer you the freedom you seek without the burden of cohabitation." Her face showed surprise, then something resembling relief. "You'd be fine with that. I want you to be content, Bridget. If you need space to sort things out, we should do it correctly. You suggested we consult lawyers to set up temporary safeguards financially while we sort things out, given our joint accounts, the house, and your business loan that I've contributed to." She appeared puzzled as she had intended to manage the situation herself with a prearranged story. However, my proposal for cooperation should have brought relief, but instead it left her confused. "Perhaps we should consult lawyers," she responded hesitantly. "I believe we need to discuss the specifics." "I've already arranged that." I had earlier discussed this with Gregory regarding the process. He stated the initial step is often freezing shared accounts temporarily, ensuring neither party can access funds inappropriately during negotiations. It seems this standard practice keeps things cleaner. Her expression grew pale upon hearing this. "Temporarily using the shared accounts until we settle the separation terms to avoid allegations of financial manipulation and ensure transparency for all parties." I asked Gregory to file the initial paperwork this morning, with account freezes scheduled by midday. He mentioned that it's reversible if we decide against separation, but for now, it offers mutual protection. Upon hearing this, Bridget set her coffee cup down nervously. "You've filed preliminary separation documents," she said. Gregory emphasized the need to clearly define dates and intentions. "Why is that necessary?" She looked at me, and I could see her understanding dawn. It wasn't divorce papers, but separation papers, a legal safeguard for assets before she could carry out her plans. The joint account she had been depleting would be frozen before any further transfers. Her strategy to arrange finances prior to filing was nullified. "You can't block our accounts without consulting me first," she retorted, her calmness shattered by anger. "We're discussing it now, and it's not a permanent action, it's precautionary. Unless you require immediate access to shared funds for some reason, I left the question hanging." She suspected this was an attempt to control financially. "You're trying to safeguard us legally during a challenging period," she asserted. "Isn't that what you desire? Unless you had other plans," her phone signaled on the table. She cast a glance at it, revealing Todd Vance's name on the screen before returning her gaze to me. A realization flashed in her eyes. She was scrutinizing all our discussions from the past month, pondering what I knew, how long I had been preparing this. She stated firmly, "We must consult lawyers." Gregory concurred. Your own lawyer is crucial. If you don't have someone in mind, I can provide a referral. The implication in that final query wasn't veiled, but I had outgrown subtleties. She was orchestrating a synchronized exit with financial arrangements and managing her social story. I merely hastened her timeline and made her act prematurely. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was Todd calling. She chose to ignore it. "I have to go to work," she declared. "Yes, we can discuss more tonight. After you've had a chance to reflect and perhaps consult with the appropriate parties." She departed without completing her coffee. I heard her car leave the driveway quicker than usual, tires screeching slightly on the turn. I remained at the kitchen counter and turned on my laptop. Gregory sent an email. "Separation filing submitted at 6:45 a.m. Accounts are being frozen. An emergency hearing is scheduled for Thursday at 2 p.m. to establish temporary financial arrangements. She will receive official notice by the end of today, as everything progresses according to plan. Thursday is still 2 days away. Bridget will receive legal notice that I've filed for separation and initiated immediate asset protection measures." She would rush to file her own paperwork to protect her financial strategy, but she's reacting to my timeline instead of executing hers. However, I have one more detail to reveal, something crucial from Carol's final surveillance report, received yesterday. Todd Vance isn't just Bridget's lover. He's also her business partner in a venture she never mentioned to me. The account she's been transferring funds into isn't solely hers. It's a joint account with Todd. 3 months ago, they established an LLC together, 2 weeks after I cosigned her business loan. The sequence of events painted a clear picture. She secured the loan with my endorsement, promptly initiated a separate business with her paramour, moved funds from the legitimate venture and our joint accounts to their new project, divorced me while leaving me responsible for the initial business loan and possibly the transferred funds. Gregory was straightforward. If she obtained that loan falsely with the intention of misdirecting funds, it's not just concealing marital assets, but actual criminal fraud. The district attorney might take notice, especially considering the substantial amount involved. The sums were indeed significant. Between the loan and the diverted funds, Bridget and Todd had transferred over $200,000 into their joint venture, leaving me liable for her initial business loan that she claimed was for her established company. Demonstrating intent was challenging. My evidence lacked proof of premeditation and coordination, making Carol's final report crucial. She obtained records from Todd's apartment building and security footage from the lobby and parking garage. The footage revealed Bridget and Todd entering together repeatedly, generally staying for 2 to 3 hours. However, the 3-month-old footage was significant. It showed them visiting his apartment with a First National banker, the same bank that had provided Bridget's business loan. Their meeting lasted 4 hours. The following day, she obtained the loan documents I had warned about. Carol also discovered email records via unspecified methods, likely unauthorized. These emails between Bridget and Todd spanned 6 months, progressing from friendly to flirtatious, eventually becoming explicit. Enmeshed within the correspondence regarding their affair were discussions about business, proposals for their joint venture, financial strategies, and the use of her current business as collateral to obtain a loan, which would subsequently be directed towards their new company. An email from Todd, written 5 months earlier, read, "Once you get him to co-sign the loan, we'll have the funds necessary for a successful launch. Your firm can bear any losses while we build. By the time he realizes it, if he ever does, we'll be well established and you'll be free." Bridget replied, "He trusts me implicitly, he won't question the loan, and once we're prepared, I'll file for it and ensure I'm portrayed as the victim. Everyone already believes I could do better." Upon reading these emails thrice, Gregory looked at me and declared, "This is a plot to perpetrate fraud." Additionally, her public social media posts suggest premeditation in the matter of marital desertion. It appears she has been planning this for at least 6 months, if not longer. So what happens next? Initially, we'll submit separation documents, secure accounts, and present all accumulated evidence during an emergency hearing. The judge will observe a recurring pattern: loan obtained fraudulently, swift misdirection of funds, extramarital affair with a business partner, planned divorce while leaving you accountable. We don't merely safeguard your assets. We could initiate a criminal investigation into the fraud. If she files her own divorce papers ahead of us, too late. We acted first, controlling the proceedings now. Her lawyer will likely suggest a swift and silent settlement when they see what we have. If this goes to trial, she's not just losing the divorce but also facing potential criminal charges. This conversation took place 6 hours ago. It's now afternoon, and I am in my office when the phone rang. "Bridget," she said without delay. "I let it ring 4 times before answering. We need to talk." I got served with papers. What the hell are you doing? She asked, as if I hadn't warned her this morning about protecting myself. Have you discussed your actions with a legal advisor? Yes, she clarified that it's not permissible to seize assets without valid reason. In fact, as part of the separation process, I have requested temporary financial safeguards pending full disclosure, which is precisely what I did. It seems my lawyer neglected to inform you about this. This step appears to be a response to some actions on your part, don't you think so? My suspicions were correct. I knew you had been dissatisfied. I was aware of your involvement with someone else. I discovered your money transfers, and I am aware that you intended to file for divorce while leaving me vulnerable to joint financial responsibilities. Indeed, I am safeguarding myself. Wouldn't you do the same? She inquired, giving me enough time to confirm that our call hadn't disconnected. To which I responded, what is your objective here? She sought transparency regarding the utilization of our shared resources. More specifically, she wanted a detailed explanation of the business loan I allegedly incurred and a fair separation agreement that doesn't burden me with debt from enterprises I don't profit from. You seem to be privy to specific details. To which I replied, I have enough information. The hearing is scheduled for Thursday. You should prepare to clarify certain financial transactions, bring supporting documents. What hearing are you referring to? The emergency hearing for temporary orders. Your legal representative should have that information. We will both attend. The judge will rule on account freezes and initial financial arrangements during this hearing. It should be a straightforward process if all transactions have been handled correctly on your part. After another prolonged silence, she demanded, if you know something, just say it. Don't play games. I'm not engaging in deception, Bridget. I'm terminating it. See you on Thursday. I cut off the call before she could respond. The ensuing days appeared ordinary on the exterior, masking internal turmoil. Bridget stayed with Alexis, her friend who consistently offered supportive comments on social media posts. She messaged me seeking access to the house for her belongings. I conceded, extending my work hours to provide her privacy. Gregory suggested documenting everything as evidence, so Carol was there to record what she took, mainly clothes, toiletries, some jewelry, nothing incriminating, but her social media activity ceased. No new posts or stories were published. The meticulously crafted story of her freedom halted abruptly. I envisioned Bridget, Todd, and her lawyer in urgent consultations. They were likely trying to discern what I possessed. What I knew, assessing the severity of the situation, Thursday dawned with unexpected crispness. One of those winter mornings where everything appears clear and distinct, no fog, no uncertainty. The courthouse, erected in the 1970s, exhibited an architecture typically associated with authority but more suggestive of bureaucracy. At exactly 1:30 p.m., Gregory found me in the lobby. Ready? He queried. Yes. My attorney suggested a private consultation prior to entering, which I declined. All events were now unfolding before the judge. She intended to propose a settlement, suggest terms, aiming to keep the public aware of the incident at bay. Refrain from participation. The presentation of fraud evidence will be considered, if necessary, contingent upon the parties' willingness to negotiate fair separation terms. Courtroom 4C was smaller and more compact than anticipated, featuring fluorescent lighting and 20 rows of benches, with the judge's bench conspicuously raised at the front. Bridget was present along with her lawyer, Patricia Hendricks, a woman who appeared both costly and anxious. Bridget looked considerably worse than I had seen her in years. Bare-faced, hair gathered, dark circles beneath her eyes. In stark contrast to her meticulously crafted social media persona, this was raw panic etched on a woman who'd invested months in planning, only to witness its crumbling in just 48 hours. A fleeting glance met my gaze before she averted her eyes. Exactly at 2:00 p.m., Judge Morrison entered. 78 years old, sporting gray hair and reading glasses on a chain. She took her seat, organized papers, scrutinized both parties. This was the preliminary hearing for temporary orders in the case of Morrison versus Morrison separation filing. I had examined the initial documents. Ms. Hendricks, Patricia began, your client filed a response opposing the asset freeze. I will first hear arguments on that before we discuss other temporary arrangements. She rose from her seat. Your Honor, the asset freeze was imposed without prior notification to my client and has inflicted substantial hardship, she asserted. Judge Morrison turned to Gregory. Attorney, Gregory rose composedly. Your Honor, the request for an asset freeze is based on the discovery of considerable unauthorized transactions from shared accounts before the filing of the separation papers. We possess proof indicating over $17,000 was transferred from the joint marital account to a separate business account without my client's knowledge or approval, Patricia retorted promptly. Given this trend, the freeze is precautionary, not punitive, she added. The transactions in question were legitimate business expenses for Mrs. Morrison's marketing firm. She has every right to manage her business finances from a joint account designated for household expenses. Gregory produced the initial documents. These were bank records detailing the transfers. Each transaction was categorized in the records as household or miscellaneous rather than business expenses. When asked about the account balance, Mrs. Morrison informed my client that the money was spent on groceries and entertainment. Judge Morrison scrutinized the documents. Counselor, your client didn't disclose these transfers to her spouse, Patricia pondered. My client contends she was entitled to use joint funds for appropriate reasons. However, that's not what I inquired about. Did she tell him yes or no? The funds were common property, Your Honor. She wasn't obligated to, yes or no, Counselor. Patricia glanced at Bridget, who subtly shook her head. No, Your Honor. She didn't specifically inform him of these transactions. And when asked about the diminished account balance, what did she say? A second time, Gregory interjected. She claimed the money was spent on increased grocery bills and client entertainment for herself. Business expenses, we have a text message exchange supporting this statement. He presented printed screenshots. Judge Morrison scrutinized the documents, maintaining a neutral facade, yet her gaze was keen. Your client moved substantial funds without prior notice and furnished misleading reasons when queried Ms. Hendricks, she stated. Counsel for the opposing party has rightly sought a freeze on these assets. I understand, Your Honor. However, there are exceptional circumstances. Of course, they'll be revealed as the case unfolds, replied Judge Morrison. The asset freeze remains until both parties submit comprehensive financial reports. Ms. Morrison, you'll need to detail all business-related expenditures and provide invoices and records to authenticate the transfers. If they are valid, the funds can be discussed during final settlement negotiations, if not. She paused, causing Bridget's complexion to pallor. There's another complication, Your Honor, Gregory interjected. 4 months ago, Mrs. Morrison had requested my client extend a $150,000 business loan for her marketing firm. It stated he obtained the loan under the impression it was for business growth, office space, equipment, and staff. Subsequently, it was discovered that 2 weeks post-loan acquisition, Mrs. Morrison registered a new LLC with a partner and substantial funds seem to have been moved into this new endeavor. Patricia stood up sharply, addressing the judge. Your Honor, today we're seeking temporary orders for separation, not litigating business actions. However, I need to comprehend the financial situation to establish proper temporary orders. The judge eyed Gregory. You claim the loan was acquired fraudulently. We assert there's a pattern of financial deceit posing a substantial threat to my client. He assumed the loan for one purpose. However, it appears the funds were redirected to another use swiftly afterward. Regardless, he remains accountable for the loan. Do you have proof of this redirection regarding the separation's outcome? Gregory presented Carroll's report, the limited liability company, LLC registration papers, bank records detailing funds transferred from Bridget's personal business account to her shared account with Todd Vance. We possess documents pertaining to the new business entity, its establishment timeline, and the financial transactions. Additionally, we have proof of Mrs. Morrison's romantic involvement with her business partner in this venture for at least 6 months. The courtroom fell silent. Judge Morrison looked between Patricia and Bridget. Ms. Hendricks, I require your client to address these issues. These allegations surpass typical marital asset disagreements. Patricia asked for a brief adjournment to confer with her client. Judge Morrison allowed 15 minutes. In the hallway, Gregory was content. She'll try to propose terms. This is far worse than she or her lawyer anticipated. The mix of loan fraud, marital infidelity evidence, and online rumors paints a damaging picture, one that wouldn't fare well in court or with a prosecutor. She is seeking a clean separation. No alimony, straightforward asset division. She renounces any claim on your property, and you free her from the loan responsibility. Essentially, she wishes to minimize losses and vanish before matters escalate further. If I decline, we re-enter negotiations, and I present the emails that Carroll obtained. These emails detailed discussions between her and Todd about using you for the loan and orchestrating the divorce while setting you up to bear their debt. Here, we're not merely discussing separation terms, we're discussing potential fraud charges. Would these charges actually stick? At a minimum, they would be investigated. The emails suggest a clear intent to deceive for financial advantage. The loan was procured under false pretenses. In signing the agreement, you assumed it was for one business, but funds were swiftly rerouted to another entity involved in her affair, which is clear-cut fraud. As partner, this is a textbook example. Furthermore, her public social media campaign portraying herself as an unfortunate victim while masterminding financial deceit makes this case irresistible for prosecution. Emerging from the conference room with a visibly aged appearance, Patricia seemed to have aged 5 years. Can we discuss? The negotiations spanned 20 minutes. Patricia set forth terms. Bridget was to return all transferred funds to the joint account, bear full responsibility for the business loan, waive any right to your property or assets, agree to an uncontested divorce without alimony, and consent to a non-disclosure agreement restricting public statements about the marriage or separation. In exchange, you would commit not to pursue fraud charges or divulge the evidence amassed to outsiders. However, Gregory counterproposed. Bridget's inclusion in the settlement ensured complete disclosure of the loan's expenditure, compensation for any proven losses, and an agreement that if she defaulted within 5 years, fraud charges could be filed retrospectively. Patricia attempted to contest this last point, but lacked conviction. Evidently, Bridget had viewed the email proof Gregory intended to present, comprehending the severity of the situation. We reached a compromise. The preliminary terms were scribbled on paper and later formalized in legal documents within a week. Bridget signed without comment, her hand trembling slightly. Judge Morrison scrutinized the handwritten accord. While uncommon, if both parties concurred to these conditions, he would sanction them as temporary orders prior to the final divorce petition submission. Mrs. Morrison, you acknowledge taking full responsibility for a significant loan, returning transferred funds, and relinquishing substantial matrimonial privileges. Yes, Your Honor, Bridget murmured, and it was done voluntarily without duress. Yes, very well, these conditions are accepted. I'll expect the formal documentation within a week. You're both free to depart. In the corridor afterwards, Bridget halted. Patricia attempted to intervene, but Bridget dismissed her. I need clarity, she said. 3 weeks ago, I realized Instagram posts weren't as private as assumed, and this entire plan was set in motion. For 6 months you were plotting, Bridget, while I was preparing for 3 weeks. I never intended, It wasn't supposed to inflict pain like this on you. You were leaving me with debt from a business that offered me no benefit while starting a new venture with someone you were romantically involved with. You were planning to end our marriage while projecting yourself as the victim of an unhealthy relationship. What aspect of this wasn't meant to cause pain? She remained silent. The Instagram post, I explained. While you were beside me, the label of solely single was imposed. It was then that I chose to initiate proceedings. If you wished to be unattached, I made it a reality on my terms. She apologized, but her words held little weight now. You're ensnared, she said. There lies a distinction. Tricia swiftly pulled Bridget away as she prepared to retort. I observed them depart through the courthouse doors. Bridget's posture slumped, her self-assuredness fractured. Gregory patted my shoulder. The turn of events exceeded expectations. She could have contested this, made it tumultuous, prolonged the agony, but the evidence was indisputable and her legal advisor acknowledged it. In a few months, your divorce will be finalized, a complete break, no residual obligations. As for Todd Vance, I assume he's aware of the situation by now. I imagine she's informing him as we speak. Their company was founded on deceitful funds, making it impossible for them to utilize the money without risking criminal charges. Thus, they essentially own a capital-less corporation with an unmanageable loan, leading to its imminent collapse. As predicted, 3 months later, their partnership dissolved legally. Bridget returned the embezzled funds and offered accounting records, revealing that most of the loan sum was deposited into the LLC but not yet expended, taking full responsibility for repayment. Consequently, her original advertising firm, which operated legitimately, encountered financial difficulties due to the capital she had misdirected. Forced to reduce operations, let go of employees, and lose office space, it was on the verge of collapse. Todd Vance's firm faced similar predicaments. It turned out that an affair with a married client and involvement in loan fraud weren't beneficial for his business once word spread within professional networks. For several months, Bridget's social media remained inactive. Upon her return, the atmosphere shifted dramatically. No longer were there posts promoting fictitious liberation or narratives about self-discovery. Instead, she shared tranquil professional content related to marketing trends and sporadic photos with enigmatic captions. I sold the old house, burdened by too many recollections of my marriage's demise that I had pretended not to witness. In its place, I bought a smaller urban dwelling, convenient for work, less demanding to manage. The postnuptial agreement functioned flawlessly, preserving our distinct assets. My only significant financial setbacks were the time and legal expenses incurred. However, Gregory's career shielded me from the devastating losses Bridget had intended. On our 10th anniversary, I received a text from an unknown number with merely 2 words, "I apologize." I chose not to reply. There was no more to discuss. A few months later, over coffee with a colleague, he brought up mutual acquaintances from my former marriage. Encountered Alexis at a business function. She mentioned Bridget is facing difficulties, dealing with professional setbacks and a sour relationship ending. It seems the man involved was taking advantage of her. I didn't voice my thoughts on karma. What truly mattered was that I anticipated the deception, meticulously recorded it, and acted to safeguard my interests before she could execute her scheme. She aimed to stage being single while methodically destroying our marriage on her own terms, but I had preemptively turned her performance into a reality, both literally and figuratively. She was so engrossed in her elaborate plan, her curated social media story, her carefully orchestrated exit strategy, that she overlooked my preparation of a counter move. The 2:47 a.m. Instagram post had been her last play in a game she believed she controlled. By 6:30 a.m., I drastically altered the game board. Occasionally, the most potent retaliation is allowing a person's schemes to disintegrate due to their own deceit. I didn't require revealing her secrets or tarnishing her image. I merely aimed to shield myself, record her actions, and let the repercussions unfold organically. Ultimately, I sought solitary focus. She had provided it, along with debt, business ruin, a wrecked affair relationship, and the recognition that her 6 months of planning were diminished in 3 weeks by someone she considered insignificant. The most intriguing aspect: she documented it all herself. Every social media post, every comment, every public display of liberation. When Gregory presented that timeline in court, revealing her publicly celebrating singleness while secretly orchestrating fraud, it conveyed the narrative more effectively than any argument could. She had craved an audience for her transformation. She received one. However, it was not the empathetic audience she had anticipated. I no longer monitor her social media or her professional affairs. I'm disinterested in any updates regarding Todd or her loan repayments. The divorce chapter is definitively closed with the signing of the final papers. People occasionally inquire if I harbor resentment, but I don't. Bitterness entails constant fury over something beyond control. I took control instead. I acted decisively, safeguarded myself, and departed unscathed. And now I am cautious, more attentive than before, a lesson I learned from Bridget: trust actions more than words, believe them. Their patterns are more significant than their explanations. On tranquil nights in my new home with the city lights flickering on, while enjoying a solitary dinner at my own pace, I reminisce about that moment at 2:47 a.m. While she beamed at her phone in the dark, crafting an alternate existence beside the reality she aimed to cast off, she thought for certain I wouldn't perceive, wouldn't deduce, wouldn't react. That belief was her gravest error, for I did discern. I did surmise. And when I responded, I did so while she slumbered, rendering her Instagram caption a more foretelling prophecy than she intended, ultimately single-minded but not in accordance with her wishes.